all doing well. I wanted to bring this information because we've been doing the live sessions on how to deal with charge-offs. Last week, we dealt with collections. This week, I'm going to give you guys some tips on how to deal with charge-offs because, of course, if you have negative items, many a times the charge off will be one of those items. So as you guys come in, if you have questions, make sure you put it in the comment section and I will address your questions. And I'm going to jump right into it just in case people are watching the replay. Now, if you have a charge off, one thing you got to understand about charge offs are generally the way it works. You have an open account, and what happens is if you don't pay that account, generally, thank you for joining me, Brandon. You always are checking in, so thanks for joining me. And everybody that comes in, just give me the thumbs up if you can. It helps get the live out there. A charge off is usually what it's going to be is an account that went into default because you haven't paid, and generally in 180 days, if they don't receive a payment and they're trying to collect, they'll charge off the account, meaning they'll write it off, so as a loss. So they're not going to recoup, so they just write it off. So this is what you might have on your credit report as a write-off or a charge-off. So if you have a write-off or a charge-off, one of the first things that you need to do, of course, you need to look at your credit report and just journal down all your negative items that you have. But when it comes to a charge-off, the way you're going to deal with it, it's dictated on the time and the amount that you owe. Okay, so what's the time, how long it's been charged off, and the amount that you owe. Okay, so you want to look at it in that perspective. Now, when it comes to any negative items, always remember, if you're going to dispute this item, you want to remove old addresses. If all is possible, if that charge off is there and you are still at the same address, if you have a parent or someone nearby, if you can dispute from another address, it will be optimal for you. Because one thing you got to understand about the credit system, my name is Sherry Beckley. I'm not the only Sherry Beckley that lives in my state, that lives in my region, or live in the United States. There are tons of Sherry Beckleys that's in the U.S. People move all the time. Thank you for joining me, Rodney. So people constantly move, and there's tons of people that have your same exact name. So how do they identify what account belongs to you and what account belongs to somebody else with my same exact name? It's certain personal identifiers that they connect that account to you, and one of them being is your addresses. This is why they tend to want to hold on to all your previous addresses, especially like Equifax will almost even have your childhood old address on there, because any charge off, any collections, any negative items, they don't like to remove it because that account is what is connected to that address when you open that account. So you want to dispute, look at your credit report before you dispute negative items, period, and get rid of all those old addresses. Plus, look at your names. Look at any inaccurate information, because they might smell your name. Like one time I had on there Shirley Beckley, or so you want to remove all of that stuff, because even people that have items that are not theirs on their credit report, they're not above connecting somebody else's items on your credit report. And if you live in a big building and somebody have a common name like Jerry Jackson, or just something, Steven Jackson, a very common name, you might have a person with your age, close to your same name, and living in the same building as you. So that will seat that address to you. A lot of times this happened too with people that have juniors, or a family member with the same name. Sometimes mothers even name their daughters after themselves, or especially fathers. That kid follows you, especially if you have a teenage or an adult child that lives with you and have the same name. Their credit items can attach to your name, because sometimes the address of that person and you lived at the same address. So it's always good to get all your old addresses off. But when you're dealing with a charge off, you want to look at the age, and then you want to look at the amount of what you owe. So for me, and I'm going to add a third thing, what you're trying to do in your immediate future. Like if you're trying to buy a house in 6 months, this is going to influence what you're going to do. Like how soon you're trying to get a particular loan, buy a home, should dictate your approach. Okay. Always remember, your credit profile is going to be definitely different from your cousins or anybody else. Because I have other people that reach out to me. Well, my cousin, did this and their score, this, and that. Your cousin might have not had the same items. I could just about guarantee your cousin don't have the same items as you reporting on your credit report, the same amounts, the same types of items. So when you're looking at that charge off, you want to know too, what kind of account was it? So it's a different approach if you're dealing with a repossession that turned to a charge off. That's paperwork attached to that. That could be pretty difficult, okay, because you got paperwork that you signed. So with repossessions, I have a whole package. I won't get into that, but I have a whole different approach on how you approach a repossession. Credit cards. Credit cards, they don't have a contract that you generally sign and send back. Most people don't do that. So that can be a weaker standpoint. And it also depends on how much you owed. If you got like 10 to 20,000, some people have real large numbers of credit card debt that they defaulted on. That company is not probably willing to let that go so easily. Okay, so the amount, also the age dictates your approach. Another thing, when we're talking about age, you want to be careful, because if it's a really old account, you want to look at your statute of limitations, right? On how can I be sued with this? Can I be sued? If you can't be sued for that, once you look at your state statute of limitations, you might have a different approach on how you want to resolve that issue. So let's lay out ways to resolve that issue with a charge off. Number one, you can dispute it directly with the credit bureaus. With charge offs, if it's a large amount, like over, I'm gonna say over $3,000, because generally a lot of people don't have maybe $3,000 in the bank. $3,000 and up. If it's something recent or whatever, if you have time to, you're not trying to buy a home like in the next 6 months, you can dispute that item off. You can try to dispute that. Remember, with the dispute process, nothing is always guaranteed. So when you have charge-offs, it all depends on where that charge-off is reporting. Sometimes when you have a charge off or any negative item, you always got to review all three major credit reports, because some people luck out. Like sometimes that charge off isn't reporting, for example, let's say on Experian or maybe TransUnion. So you don't have to deal with disputing that item with that credit report. You can just focus on the other two credit bureaus. And if it's an Experian, it's not reporting there, you can apply for credit or do whatever you need to do. You just make sure you're dealing with banking institutions that only pull from Experian only. Okay, now that won't work if you going for a house, because they pull all three. But if you're going for credit cards, wherever that item is not reporting, you try to tend to apply for credit cards that's on your clean bureau where that negative item is not at. Then you can dispute the other two, and as you remove each item, you're clearing up your credit report. So if you have a larger amount, I'm going to say 3,000 and up, you can dispute on that item, especially if it's a recent item. You may want to dispute, and I'm talking about maybe like in a 2-year time frame. Okay, now the other option, always to settle. Okay, let's even take, and why I said $3,000 and down. $3,000, depending on the age of that item, if they can't sue you and they really can't collect and that item is reporting, you might want to consider trying to settle that. My rule of thumb with settlement, if it's about 3 years old, within a 3 years old, 0 to 3 years old, see if you can settle for 75% of the account, okay, of the total all cost. See if they will settle for that. That's just my general rule of thumb. At least 75% and down. So if you feel like, hey, I can come to the table with less, go ahead, shoot your shot. See if you can make a payment arrangement, whatever, to bring that account to make payments, and do it as, once you paid it off, could they report it as paid as agreed? You always want to aim for paid as agreed, because that is the highest form of a credit mark for an account on your profile. Now, sometimes what you can say is, if they're a little resistance, hey, what I'll do is you can report it negative until it's paid off completely, and then update it as paid as agreed. Okay, you always, anytime you're making any settlements, you want to get that in writing. You're not paying 1 red cent until they agree to your terms in writing. Send you an email, you send them a letter, and somebody is signing it. They're sending you an agreement, an email, preferably. You want to get some documentation in writing. So that can be your first approach if you want to settle that out. Now, if it's over 3 years old, I'm going to start 50% and down to pay that item off. Okay, to see if they can go ahead and make that account paid as agreed. Now, the reason why I tell people settlement, even with like credit card institutions, let's take Navy Federal. A lot of people will tell me, hey, I got a charge off with Navy Federal. I see you putting out videos. You think they'll work with me again? Yeah, if you make a payment arrangement with them, Navy Federal will work with you again. You could even American Express, Chase. Sometimes it's not good to burn everybody, okay? You got to have a place to go. You know, you don't want to just burn every relationship, every bridge out there, because let's say you dispute it and you remove it, and you have burnt all of the major credit card companies, top tier credit card companies. Okay, now your credit is cleared up. Do they want to work with you anymore? What is your quality of life is going to be with these companies? Now, if you got American Express, Chase, Discover, all of them, okay, if you say, hey, I'm not really worried about mending a relationship with Discover, hey, go ahead, dispute and go for it. But you don't want to burn everybody all the time, so you do need a place to go. So many of people will look at bankruptcy, like I'm just going to bankrupt and that's it. About time you go through the bankruptcy process for a bankruptcy that is reporting on your credit report, especially for Chapter 7, for 7 years. I mean, not 7 years, 10 years. And then trying to dispute those accounts off, because with bankruptcy, you have to remove the public bankruptcy report in there in the public section. And then when you charge that, go for bankruptcy Chapter 7, all those accounts that was wrapped in those bankruptcies will be a charge off, and it'll say wrapped up in bankruptcy. So about time you dispute all of that, you can make some arrangements with these companies, and maybe in a year, maybe in 6 months, you can have this paid off. And as I always tell you guys, it only takes 90 days, as long as that thing is not constantly hitting you negative, to have your score go back up. So you can recoup way faster than filing for bankruptcy, trying to deal with that and have these items chasing you for 10 years. So that's going to be my always going to go to. I had one client, she kept dealing with a credit repair company for a couple of little small charge off items. She was paying them $89 a month, and they was disputing for her for like 2 years, and it was a charge off kept coming back. It was a couple. One was like $189. One was $200. People, don't sit there and even waste your time with those. See if you can settle that. Why waste your time disputing over some items that you could go ahead and just see if you can make an arrangement to pay that off and get that off of your credit report? That is always going to be your best go-to, because if you're a person with a bunch of credit account issues that's charged off, you want to try to employ the best strategy as possible. So that's what's going to be your go-to. And I saw somebody say, well, what if you didn't get it in writing? If you paid it and they ain't remove it, you're going to have to dispute it. Pretty much, if you didn't get it in writing, there's nothing you can do if they don't remove it. All you can do is dispute that item, and that's it. It generally is going to report as a paid charge off. So, I mean, I guess it's closed out. So if you're trying to buy a home or whatever, that shouldn't stop you depending on that bank's guidelines. But if you don't get something in writing, you guys, you are actually leaving yourself with very little recourse. And you can't take them to court because you really just don't have any proof. Okay, so that's just, sometimes it's a learning lesson in life. You'll just have to go ahead and dispute with the credit bureaus on those items. I got 29 people in here. Do me a favor, you guys. Give me a thumbs up. So that's going to be your first approach. Anything under $3,000, see if you can settle it. Now, if you even have a newer account and it's above $3,000 and you really need to restore that relationship with that banking institution, see if you can make payment arrangements on dealing with that. But if you want to dispute those items, what you want to make sure that you do is remove all the addresses connected to there. So you want to unseat as many addresses as possible. Now, if you're going to go with the disputing route, one thing you need to look at with that charge off, I mentioned it last week with the collections. Many times with a charge off, you'll see some reporting errors. So you want to look at all three credit reports and how that account is reporting. One thing, if you're disputing, you want to look at, if it's a collection that's with that charge off. They got a charge off and a collection. If that collection where it says balance has a balance, let's say of $500, and they have a charge off for $500, you need to dispute both items because they're double, it's really like double jeopardy. Because if they sold that account and it was transferred and you only owe $500, now this collection is reporting five and the charge off is reporting a balance of $500. That's $1,000. Okay, so that is incorrect. That is a violation of the FCRA. If that charge off is there and they sold it, it needs to say zero. Another thing you need to look at to see if it has a payment amount. So if that charge off have been sold and it is a collections now, it should not have a monthly payment amount of, let's say, payment. Say if it was a car, a repossession, it should not have a payment amount of $580 a month or whatever payment amount. That should be zero. Okay, so make sure you're looking at the way they're reporting that. Make sure you're looking at the high balance across all three credit reports. So the high balance for, let's say, a car would be the original loan amount. If it's a credit card, the high balance has to be the same across the board, because what is going on, you got one source reporting the information to three different bureaus, but it's one source. So if this is incorrect and that's incorrect and this is incorrect, the source is lying. Okay, the source is reporting inaccurate information. Because it's true that you did owe them something, it doesn't mean they have a right to report inaccurate information. So you can dispute it on those grounds. Another thing you need to watch out for, and this is very, very common, you'll see a charge off and then you'll see a collection. So say they did it right, they zeroed it out, but you started that account, or the last payment on that account that you made was, let's say, February 1st, 2016. You'll see a collection agency come in and report that collection for the new date of, let's say, May 1st, 2022. That is incorrect reporting. They have to report it from the date of last payment on that account. The last date of the last payment on that account. They use that little tricky scheme. It's really re-aging that debt, because the date of your last payment on that account starts the 7-year clock to run. So a lot of collection companies, you'll see them do that, update that like it's a new collection account, and they can't just keep reporting that. They have to go from the date of last payment, or that count has been re-aged. So you can dispute it on that. They re-aged that account. So anytime that you are disputing, look for those, because those are very common ways that charge-offs, even collections, how they will work. Look to make sure if it's a collection, that charge-off should report a zero balance. If there's a balance there, if there's a payment, monthly payment there, that is incorrect. They can't report both. That is double dipping. So that is inaccurate. Look at all three credit bureaus and see if it's any inconsistencies anywhere. There's a lot with them, was very common when you look at your that account across the board, one might say February, date of last payment. Another one might say January, the date of last payment. Another one might say December. That's being re-aged. One of these accounts, something is off here because it's the same account. And so how the last payment is 2 or 3 different months. Also look at the date that it was open. So you want to look at all of those. Even with credit cards, it'll tell you the credit line, limit amount, anything that is missing or inaccurate, you want to dispute that account on those grounds. So let me see if what questions you guys have so I can address them. But that will be your basis on how to deal with that. Thank you for joining me. Brandon, Anna, Rodney, also DJ from Alabama. Thank you. Antoinette for joining me also. Anonymous said, is a collection a charge-off that was sold? Generally, yes. That's what a collection is going to be. So what happens is, like I said, if you have an account that was open, that they couldn't collect generally for 180 days, and you don't pay on that account, that company will charge that debt off or write off. And you might see charge off or write off on your credit report. And many a times they'll sell that to a collection company. Okay, so you might see both. Sometimes you'll see the charge off removed and it's just as a collection. So that's what a collection is. Generally, it's going to be a charge off that's sold. Okay, but sometimes you might not see, they might remove the charge off altogether and it just shows up as a collection. Okay. Charlene, thank you for joining me. I appreciate you. Blood Moon said, how do you know which banks reports to which bureaus? You can just Google that. You can, do you mean report, or do you mean like pull from each bureau, where I'm saying like credit card accounts? You can Google that, and if you're saying what bank is reporting to your bureaus as far as that negative item, like I said, all you got to do is look at your credit report to see if that charge off is there. So you will access all 3 credit bureaus to see if it's reporting on all 3. Okay, because sometimes that not necessarily, sometimes they don't report. Let's say, I think I get it confused. I have a Wells Fargo account, credit card. Like Wells Fargo don't report. Is it Experian or Wells Fargo? I don't think they report to Experian. I always get it confused. But I think they report to Equifax and TransUnion. But Wells Fargo don't report to Experian. Now, I never had a charge off with Wells Fargo, so I don't know if they're going to report that charge off to Experian. I think they don't report to Experian. If not, if anybody know, I have an account. I don't know. I get it. I do get it off, but they don't report to one of these bureaus. Okay, Wells Fargo. But I don't know if it's a charge off. Do they not report that charge off to that bureau? So that can be an example. Thank you for joining me, Jennifer. I appreciate you. And Sean, thank you for joining me. I have a question from Mr. McCrae. It said, what if you didn't get it in writing? Can you get the settlement removed once paid? No, like I said, I think I addressed that one. No, you're just going to have to dispute it, unfortunately. That would be your only recourse unless they remove it from the goodness from the bottom of their heart. But if they got the money, no, most likely. All right, Miss Acosta said, hello, Sherry, great information. My charge-offs are 6 years old, almost 7 years old. I heard that they were supposed to change the law from 7 years to 4 on our credit report items. I heard that too, but I haven't seen it change. If you're that close on how many months, if you're not doing anything, I would just let it fall off. But keep in mind too, don't let them, because collection companies will try to trick you and pick up that collection, or either send you a letter in the mail to try to bait you. So everybody, we did a live last week. Check that out with collection companies. Okay, watch what you say to them on the phone, and watch out, because they are a mess and a half. So they are good to pick up those old accounts. So be careful. Anonymous says she spend more money disputing than paying it all. Exactly. So you want to be careful, like paying for credit repair companies. Sometimes, like, people dispute forever, and I don't know. A lot of people don't tell them. Look at it. If you got small little charge offs, see if you can just go ahead and resolve it. Like, paying, disputing forever, don't do that, because you're spending more money. It's all about strategy. So you have to take account of your own issues and your own situations. Even if you have a lot of negative items, why would you want to dispute smaller accounts forever if you already got, a few accounts, 5 or 6? Try to knock off as much as you can possibly, and then go and dispute the stubborn items that you have. Okay, so I'm not here to gain a buck from anybody, but that's what a lot of credit repair companies, they're in the business, and not to knock them, but they get paid for disputing. So sometimes, and that company had her constantly like, oh, don't do nothing, we'll dispute it off, and it just kept coming back. If it's that small, and what happens, what y'all see when you dispute items and they come back, understand these businesses are not just, I'm not saying they're great, but they're not targeting you personally. What they do is upload batches of information in cycles. If you have followed my information, especially on these lives, I told you they have a subscription plan with the credit bureaus. The credit bureaus force all of them to report a certain amount of names every month in order to have access to credit reporting. They gotta pay what they weigh in names. So this is why sometimes you have them being really stubborn, where they don't want to remove information, because they're on the hook, collection companies, all of them, to feed the beast. And so what happens is, every maybe quarter, they'll do a batch upload of names. So if they haven't took that information out the system on their end and you're disputing, you'll see that item come back on. But all you have to do, if you did send another dispute letter, the credit bureaus is supposed to notify you at least 5 days prior to reinserting a negative item on your credit report, and you can dispute it from that. But instead of going to that cycle, if you still see that you have that item coming back and it's a small item, see if you can settle it and get it off. And you said, I had a medical bill, I got removed, but the company resold the debt. I received a letter about it, verifying the debt within 30 days. I responded with a debt validation letter, and they never responded. And that's what you do. Pretty soon, medical collections, hopefully at the beginning of 2023, especially if they under $500, they won't be reporting those for a year. After July 1st, if you pay that off, they won't be reporting that at all if it's under $500. But if I was y'all, like I told y'all last week, I'll wait for that to happen after July 1st, which is a month, and see if that really pans out. I wouldn't just go paying off all my medical collections under $500. But that's what you can do, because if they're sending you, any collection company sending you a letter saying you have 30 days to verify the debt. Make sure you always send your debt validation letter, because they'll try it. If you don't do it, they'll just slap it on your credit report. If you send that debt validation letter within that 30-day window, if they don't validate it, they can't put it on your credit report. So you want to make sure that you always go that route. Okay. So I'm hoping that this is helpful. Do anybody else have any questions? Because I'm not going to hold you guys late tonight. If hopefully that should have helped with collections on how you want to approach that. Always remember, when you're dealing with your credit, it's about strategy. You don't want to sit around disputing forever. You're trying to move on with your life. So whatever you can do when it comes to charge-offs, because charge-offs itself is your debt. You don't do this with approach with collections, because if you found out it was a third party, they didn't validate it, but it's on my credit report. I have a second letter, so you would send a second letter if it's a medical collection. Go and see my videos on medical, because I don't want to go into all of that. I covered that last week with charge-offs, so go and see that live, and I went in heavy detail with that. So a debt validation letter is a letter for collections. Okay, so we're talking about charge-offs, but it's a collections for collection companies, and it's your right to see if they have a valid legal right to collect that debt, because that was sold to them. So anybody that have questions about collections, today we're talking about charge-offs. I went in great painstaking detail last week. Go and check out that with collections. So this is charge-offs. Don't try to settle collections, okay? Or before you do that, go watch my prior video, because we talked about collections are on a weaker standpoint because they purchased the debt. You never did business with them. So you want to handle collections not like charge-offs. Okay, you can still dispute collections off with the credit bureaus, but watch that video on why I said be careful with paying them. Okay, so go and check that out. It's right here on the post. So check that out, you guys, if you have collection questions. And Charlene said, why does American Express report the same charge off every month? It's been over a year and they're still reporting. Do you mean monthly or constantly reporting it like as a charge off? Or do you mean monthly reporting it? Because a charge off can stay on your credit for 7 years. They can report it. It doesn't mean that they're always going to sell it to a collection company. If I was you, like I just said at the beginning, if it's American Express, some of these relationships you should not want to burn. You kind of want to move forward in life. So I would suggest to see if you can settle the debt and move forward with your life, and sometimes mend that relationship with that. So that's what I'm going to I tell people. And if it's within a year, to try to settle it for 75% of the debt. And see, if you make a settlement, get it in writing and ask them to update it as paid as agreed once you pay it. They report it you can dispute it if they're reporting it every month as a monthly negative item. So you can dispute it with the credit bureaus if they're charging you that the debt is a charge off and it should be settled. But my suggestion, if it's American Express, you don't want to burn everybody. See if you can settle the debt. So I know a lot of people, they just, it's just best, if you're going to move on, to try to mend certain relationships. You don't want to burn, because I could see like First Premier, Missionary Lane. Those are relationships you don't want really forever anyway. But if you have top tier companies, where are you going to go once you get this credit together? What are where are you going to go optimally, to get lower interest rates or, better rewards? You kind of want to go for quality of life. So if a charge-off stay on your credit report for 7 years and fall off, can it reappear? It shouldn't. As a collection, if it does, then like I said, that's re-aging that debt. So you would dispute that account has been re-aged for that charge-off. For that collection. So you would dispute that collection for re-aging, because it has to go off the date of last payment of that account. So I hope this was helpful for you guys. Next week, I will not be live. I'll see y'all. I'll be traveling. Actually, I'll be on a flight. So I will answer your questions. If y'all want to, hit me up at my website the following week. But probably I'll be doing 2 lives this month. 2 weeks I won't be doing a live. My daughter is graduating, so I will be there for that, and I'm going to be traveling while doing that. So I hope you guys, I'll see you the following Saturday. I want you guys to be safe. Thank you for always joining me. A lot of my faithful few that's in here, thank you so much. And to all my new people that's joining me, so make some if it's anything you guys want to know on these live Q&A sessions, put in the comment section what you might want to know about credit, and I can answer the question. Thank you so much, Charlene. I appreciate it. And thank you, King. I appreciate you guys. And thank you for joining me. I want you guys to be safe and be blessed. Stay tuned.